Oh my goodness, look who's back. After getting my fourth, come on mate, fight me in real life, I'll kick your motherfucking ass, motherfucker, thread of the day, I figured, you know what, I'm bored, I'm gonna make a video today. And this is a true story. This is what actually happened recently to me. You'll tell by the title now before you go off saying, oh boy, this is gonna be a good one. I did not get armed robbed. But I was involved in armed robbery. Well, I guess I better eliminate the other option too. I did not rob somebody. But recently, and I'm going to leave the details a little bit vague because I'm not sure if they actually caught the people yet. But recently, let's say within 2 weeks, I was actually involved in an armed robbery. Yes, all sorts of fun, right? So basically, here's what happened. I'm not going to make fancy any part of the story, emphasize any part of the story. This is what actually happened. And here we go. So basically, it was about a little before 9 o'clock at night, and I don't live in a city. I live in the country, basically the outskirts, not even the suburbs. I live on pretty much the city line, way out there. But I do have to travel, like, for work into the city and stuff like that, and for the reasons, that's where all the stores are. So it was a little bit before 9, and I was driving, not really a back road, but one of the surface roads in the city there. And it wasn't terribly dark. They have the street lights on every other block or so, so it wasn't terribly light either. I'm driving down the road, and I have the windows down because it's still a little bit hot in November, right? It's, geez, I think back this like a week or two ago, it was like 60 something now at 9 o'clock at night in November. What the hell's going on, you global warming deniers? Anyway, so I'm driving. I have the windows down, and that's important. Because I have the windows down, and I look, and I see this girl running, this woman running down the side of the street, which, if you're not a kid, typically it's a little bit strange for you just to see. If you're not a kid, it's a little strange to see him running on the side of the road there. So I'm like, what is that? So I turn the radio down, and what do I hear? Just frantically yelling, help, help, help. So I'm like, well, this is about to make my night a little bit more interesting. So this is where you come to a crossroads, and this is where I've always been, I don't want to say different than most people, but this is what puts me in a certain group of people where this is where you kind of come to a split. You can just drive by that. There's no law saying you have to stop and help, and trust me, I see it more than I care to believe. This will often happen with car accidents. And it'll happen when there's any sort of thing going wrong. You'll just see people drive right past the entire scene. And there's also something called the bystander effect, where a bunch of people might be bystanding, or a bunch of people might pass a scene, and they'll have the thought in their head, I'm sure somebody else will take care of it. And the problem is, too many people have that thought in their head, and that leads to the person not actually getting the help they need. I've been involved in a lot of not car accidents that I've been involved in, but I've been right there when they've happened. I mean, serious, big rollovers, where people have just drove by. And this is mind-boggling to me, because I am in the other group. I just have to help them. I've got to help them out. And this is where people say, but yes, you might get injured yourself, or in the case of this armed robbery, you might, you might get shot. You're right, you might. But driving past it and knowing you didn't do anything, that kind of stuff really sticks with me. So anyway, I stopped the car just a little bit ahead of this woman, and I say, hey, what's going on? I figured she'd been raped or something, because, I mean, she's just frantic, and she yells out that she'd just been robbed by 2 people with a gun. I'm not going to get into any sort of descriptions or anything like that. Like I said, I'm going to leave some things vague. She'd been robbed by 2 people with a big gun. So I helped her get to the end of the street, which is where she was running, and of course I had my gun on at the time. Because I'm a concealed carrier, always carry it with you, and I'll talk about this more in a second, but the one I had at the time was my SIG P9, or geez, I guess it went up in caliber, SIG P238. That is the one I had at the time, and I'll talk about the caliber choice here in just a second too. And I went, and I led her to the nearest convenience store, which is, of course, well lit. It's got cameras and stuff like that. By the way, if you're ever in a situation like that, that's what you want to do. You don't want to just kind of stay there and call the cops and, just because you're armed, everything's going to be all right. No, You want to get to a nice, well-lit area where there's going to be cameras to possibly record anything they may have seen or record a suspect, and it's well-lit. That'll drive people away. So we let her there. She called the cops. The cops came. And it was like, well, it was the cavalry, and the city police came, the state police came, private investigators came in unmarked cars, this and that. It still took them, and the police department's about a block away from this. It still took them about 3 minutes. 3 to, if not even more. Time can be a little bit messed up when you're in a situation like this. It still took a good amount of time. Trust me, if you actually needed help at the time, they'd just be there to draw the chalk outline. And the cops came and asked questions and stuff. They asked me questions because I was there right when it happened. I was the first one that she ran over to. Unfortunately, I didn't actually see any of this happening. I didn't see the actual robbery taking place, but it happened within, I'm going to say, 20 seconds of the time that I had got there. But there's a few things I want to talk about that. First thing I want to address is, as I mentioned before, I'm just the kind of person that has to act in this sort of situation. It's just, I'm not saying, oh, I'm Mr. Cool, look at the hero or anything. It has nothing to do with that. It's just always the way I've been. So what I'll say there is carrying a gun had no effect on whether I acted or not. It's not like, well, I would have stopped, but I didn't have any protection. No. And it's not, well, I wouldn't have done anything, but I had my gun, so I stepped out. No, that has absolutely nothing to do with it, and that's a terrible mindset. You shouldn't do anything armed that you wouldn't do unarmed. It's really a last resort. You're not out there to police the situation. That should not be a distinction at all. The other thing is the caliber I want to talk about. This is the 380, and when you're in those sorts of situations, and it's just a mind thing. When you're in those sorts of situations, you always feel like you're going to be undergunned anyway. You're going to be undergunned. But this was the easiest for carrying in my pocket. That was the best way I could carry it at the time. As it was getting a little bit further into the season, I could have worn a light windbreaker. The reason I say that is I typically don't wear a lot of jackets and stuff like that. Even in the winter, I'll only wear a light coat, but I'll wear a light windbreaker if it gives me bigger pockets. And even a slightly bigger pocket would have let me carry what I picked up today. This is a Walther PPS in 9mm. I'm a Walther fan. I've actually been paying this off for a while on Bud's, which, by the way, fuck Bud's Gun Shop. We'll talk about that in another video. This is the Walther PPS in 9mm. I'd have been a lot happier with 9mm, but I'm sure if it would have happened with a 9, I would have been happy with a 10. If it would have happened with a 10, I would have been happier with a Smith & Wesson 500 Magnum. It's just a mental thing. I understand that. This is not a caliber war. It's just something that goes through your head. Speaking of go through your head, even though I wasn't the one that got robbed, when you have somebody coming at you like this, freaking out because they just got robbed, my mind went into the exact same state that it went into when I'm lifeguarding. I have to make a life or death decision, I have to make a rescue or something like that. People all describe it differently, and I think it all affects people differently, the adrenaline rush and all that. Some people say it's tunnel vision. Some people say you'll freeze up. For me, it's always been the same, and I've had it happen. I've had multiple people rescues in the water, and I don't mean multiple people rescues. I mean like more than one at once. And it's always the same. It's not really tunnel vision. It's just for me. It's just I focus on what I need. I just focus at the job at hand. I guess you might call that tunnel vision, but it's actually step by step focusing on what I need. That is exactly how it went in this situation. When I saw her come up, check the scene, make sure there's no immediate threats. Check to make sure everything's where it needs to be. Should heaven forbid? Oh, look at the atheist saying that. I know I'm saying it. I'm saying a popular colloquialism for that. You should have to use the gun. You're always hoping that you don't have to, and then get to safety and call the cops. And while you can try to get information off of her, and say she might be able to tell you, what they look like, and you might be able to relay that to police, it's not so she doesn't forget it by the time that she gets there. When you're dealing with these kind of people, whether it's a car accident or a lifeguard rescue that I make, or this situation, they're usually just so freaked out they don't even know what's going on. This girl that this happened to, she was just shaking like a leaf. She could barely stand up, fumbling the phone around. Luckily, she didn't drop the phone. And that's another thing to consider when you're talking about, just call the cops. Why do you need a gun? The cops will be there. You might not be able to dial the phone. It just happens where you might not be able to dial the phone. I can imagine if I ever actually do get into a defensive use of a firearm, I'll be so freaked out, and I'll probably be puking, shaking, and all this is real stuff that happens when your body's just so overloaded like that. You might not be able to dial a phone, and if you get armed robbed like that, you could be so freaked out that you might not be able to dial. You might not know where you are. If they ask you what your location is, you might have no idea. She was having trouble remembering street names. It's just the way it goes. But I wanted to share this with you. It's a true story that happened. Like I said, it's not some big, awesome fairy tale ending where, I shot the bad guys and saved the day and got the damsel. No, but it is what actually happened, and I just thought I would share that with me. Also, mostly because I just got back from the gun store picking up this. This is my 5th Walther. I guess you can never have enough. And this is going to be... It doesn't fit in like a jeans pocket. Obviously, it's empty because I already showed you. If you were paying attention, see, there's going to be a quiz at the end of this. It doesn't fit into like a jeans pocket. It could probably fit into a bigger pants pocket, like if you have a cargo pants or something like that. But I think I'll probably use it if I'm like carrying a windbreaker or a sort of light jacket. It can fit nicely in there, where something like the Glock 26, which is my normal everyday carry, it wouldn't be able to... It'll be too heavy, and it might be a little bit harder to get out. This is nice and slim. I've actually been wearing it around in a holster just empty today because I don't carry my guns before I test fire them. But I was wearing it around to see how it feels, and it feels pretty nice. So, thanks to the gun store for transferring this to me today. You know who you are if you're watching these videos out there. But that's about it. I wanted to let you guys know that little story. And I know it's been a while since I watched the videos, and I don't really have that good of an excuse. I've just been very busy I've been very busy at work, and during the summer I've been very busy scuba diving. So who knows if this will be my triumphant return, or who knows if you'll never see me again. I don't know. We don't know these kind of things. But thanks for watching, and if you have any sort of similar experiences that you'd like to share, please share them in the comments, and anything you'd like to comment on, put them in the comments. Comment on things. So, alright, thanks for watching, guys, and take it easy.